March 20th, 1995. Morning rush hour in Tokyo. 5 men step into 5 separate subway trains. Each carries a plastic bag filled with a clear liquid, sarin, a deadly nerve agent. They drop the bags, stab them with sharpened umbrella tips, then walk off the train. The gas begins to spread. Passengers collapse, eyes water, muscles seize. Some never even make it to the platform. It isn't the work of a foreign terrorist cell or a lone madman. It's a domestic cult born in Japan, backed by scientists, and led by a man who called himself Christ. This is the story of Aum Shinrikyo and how it turned a prophecy into a weapon.
Asahara.
Shoko Asahara.
Shoko Asahara.
Asahara. Shoko Asahara.
Aum Shinrikyo cult.
Aum Shinrikyo.
Aum Shinrikyo.
Aum Shinrikyo.
Aum Shinrikyo cult.
Shoko Asahara was born in Chizun, Matsumoto in 1955 in Kamamoto Prefecture, Japan. He was born into poverty and suffered from infantile glaucoma, leaving him nearly blind in one eye and partially blind in the other. At a school for the blind, he became known for manipulating classmates and exerting dominance over weaker students. After failing to enter medical school, he studied acupuncture and Chinese medicine, professions open to the visually impaired. But what began as a career in healing slowly turned towards spiritual control. In 1984, he founded a yoga school. It taught breathing techniques, meditation, and esoteric teachings. At first, it looked like just another New Age group, but by the late 1980s, it had evolved into Aum Shinrikyo, or Supreme Truth. Asahara claimed to be the next Buddha, the second coming of Christ, a prophet chosen to lead humanity through the coming apocalypse. He predicted a global war, triggered by the US, that would wipe out most of the world's population. Only Aum's followers, he said, would survive and rebuild. To some, it sounded crazy, but many listened. Japan in the late 1980s was prosperous, but spiritually hollow for many. The rigid corporate culture, rapid modernization, and collapse of a traditional family life left people searching for meaning. Aum offered that meaning, especially to Japan's youth. What's surprising is who joined. University students, engineers, scientists, and some of Japan's intellectual elite. They weren't uneducated or gullible. They were idealistic. And Asahara told them they could save the world. He promised them a role in humanity's salvation, that their suffering had cosmic value, that by surrendering everything, they could achieve ultimate truth. Recruitment happened through seminars, college clubs, even sci-fi conventions. They'd use pamphlets filled with apocalyptic imagery, then offer free meditation workshops that slowly ramped into full indoctrination. Within months, recruits were shaving their heads, donning white robes, and moving into Aum facilities. They gave up families, careers, and even their names. Aum also began to expand internationally. They opened centers in Russia, Sri Lanka, Australia, and the US. In Moscow, they were so popular that Aum reportedly had over 30,000 followers at its peak, more than in Japan. And for people that go, oh, 30,000 followers, that's not that much. No, that's not much today. When you've got social media like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and all that other stuff, you see people all day that have like 100 and something followers, 100 and something thousand followers. You know, a couple of people out there got a few million. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, in comparison from there to now, 30,000 followers doesn't seem like a lot when you have your everyday Joe that has 38, 40, 50, 150,000 followers on TikTok. So I want it to be very clear that one, going internationally and having that many followers in a different country in that time is astounding. By the early 1990s, Aum had tens of thousands of members worldwide. They bought land near Mount Fuji and built a massive compound, complete with labs, dormitories, and weapon stockpiles. This wasn't a fringe group anymore. It was a religious empire preparing for war. One of the most disturbing aspects of Aum was how it merged religion with high-level science. Asahara believed the apocalypse was inevitable, and that it was his responsibility to speed it up. That's different. Why would it be your responsibility to speed it up? I'm sorry, this is not funny, but it's like, that's different than what we're going to be seeing in the series is here, especially with apocalyptic cults. To do that, he needed weapons, and to build those weapons, he needed talent. That's where Aum's Ministry of Science came in. It wasn't a metaphor. This was a literal department within the cult, staffed with real chemists, real engineers, and real physicists. Some had PhD from Japan's top universities. They weren't brainwashed nobodies. They were true believers, and they had skills. They designed gas chambers for internal purges, synthesized LSD, methamphetamine, and advanced chemical weapons, and even explored nuclear weapon development using blueprints acquired from Russian contacts. They built their own labs and ran animal testing, and rumors even circulated that they experimented on humans, especially defectors. Asahara also ordered the development of mind control devices. One involved attaching electrodes to followers' heads while pumping his voice directly into headphones. The goal? Break down free thought and create total submission. It wasn't just about Doomsday, it was about domination. Aum didn't go from yoga to terrorism overnight, though. There were warning signs, probably big, scathing red flag warning signs. In 1989, a Tokyo lawyer named Satsumi Sakamoto began investigating Aum. He had been working with families whose children had joined the cult. He was outspoken and he had evidence. Just days before he was to appear on national TV, he vanished, along with his wife and child. The truth wouldn't come out until years later. Aum members had broken into his home, murdered all three, and disposed of the bodies in separate remote locations. Still, no crackdown came. In 1994, Aum released sarin gas in the city of Matsumoto, targeting judges involved in a real estate case. 7 died, hundreds were injured. Again, no one was arrested, and the attack was blamed on pesticide leaks. The cult had tested its weapon, and no one stopped them. Tokyo was next.
Frightening development this morning. A chemical weapon, nerve gas, was released inside a crowded subway system in Tokyo today.
March 20th, 1995. 5 Aum members boarded different Tokyo subway lines, all headed for government buildings. Each carried 2 bags of liquid sarin wrapped in newspaper. They dropped them under the seats and punctured them with sharpened umbrella tips, then just walked away. The chemical reaction was instant. Sarin, when released, turns into a gas that disrupts the nervous system. It causes choking, convulsions, blindness, and ultimately respiratory failure. Passengers collapsed. Some went blind within minutes. Others vomited, convulsed, and screamed in confusion. Train operators tried to evacuate platforms, but many were already exposed. First responders rushed in without protective gear and became victims themselves. Hospitals flooded with patients who had no idea what was happening. Some medical staff, also unprepared, were exposed during treatment. In total, 14 people died, over 5,500 were injured, and hundreds suffered permanent nerve damage. The attack paralyzed Tokyo for hours. The footage, passengers stumbling out of trains, weeping, blind, collapsing, shocked the world. It was domestic terror at its most efficient, coordinated, silent, and devastating. Within days, police raided Aum facilities across Japan. But it wasn't simple. The cult had multiple properties, underground bunkers, and early warning systems. Raids had to be coordinated with military-style precision. What they found was staggering. Multiple labs capable of producing sarin and VX gas, a list of political targets, blueprints for future attacks, including the Tokyo water supply, and a massive reinforced underground compound. They found maps with government buildings circled, gas masks, explosives, guns, and stacks of cash. Aum's inner circle had planned for a siege. They believed arrest was a signal, the beginning of Armageddon. Shoko Asahara was found hiding inside a wall cavity, surrounded by food, medicine, and books of his own teachings. He didn't speak during arrest. He never offered a full explanation. The trials took over 8 years, with dozens of Aum members charged. Asahara himself faced 13 counts of murder, including the subway and Matsumoto attacks, and the murder of Satsumi Sakamoto's family. In court, he mostly sat in silence. When he did speak, it was often incoherent or evasive. In 2004, he was sentenced to death. In 2018, he and 12 of his top followers were executed by hanging. Japan doesn't use the death penalty often, but in this case, the public barely blinked. The nation had been scarred, and for many, this was the only way forward. You'd think that would be the end of it, but Aum didn't disappear. It simply changed names. Today, it operates as Aleph, a rebranded version of the original cult. It claims to reject violence, but former members say the ideology is intact. Aleph still attracts new recruits, especially young people disillusioned with modern life. They hold secretive meetings, use encrypted apps, and move often. Japan's Public Security Intelligence Agency monitors them constantly. Aleph facilities are under surveillance, and cult members are restricted in what they can purchase, publish, or organize. There are also offshoots, like Hikari no Wa, which preaches peace but still reveres Asahara as a spiritual figure. Globally, Aum's model has inspired fringe groups in Russia, Southeast Asia, and even online radical communities. It showed how a cult can industrialize violence, how doomsday prophecy can be fused with chemical engineering. Aum wasn't just a tragedy, it was a playbook. The Tokyo subway attack didn't just end lives, it rewired the national psyche. Survivors speak of living with constant fear, chronic anxiety, and lingering health issues. Many suffered from PTSD, vision loss, and neurological damage. Some still can't ride the subway. First responders, many of whom had no idea they were walking into a nerve gas scene, now speak publicly about the trauma they endured. Several had to leave the profession altogether. Tokyo's emergency response infrastructure was overhauled. Chemical attack drills, hazmat deployment, and mass casualty protocols became standard in Japanese cities. Globally, the Aum attack triggered a new wave of anti-terror legislation, especially focused on chemical and biological threats. U.S. intelligence agencies began tracking cults more closely, especially those mixing tech with apocalyptic belief. Forensic psychologists point to Aum as a landmark case, the first modern cult to fully weaponize both science and devotion. It changed how we define a threat. Even decades later, Aum's echo can be heard in conversations about domestic terror, religious extremism, and lone wolf radicalization. The subway attack wasn't just a moment, it was a warning, and a monumental one at that. The scariest part of Aum isn't what they built, it's who built it. Highly educated, technologically brilliant people didn't just follow Asahara, they built his empire. But why? Because belief isn't about intelligence, it's about vulnerability. Aum promised meaning in a world that felt empty. It offered control in a society that demanded conformity. It weaponized existential dread and gave it a uniform. Psychologists now recognize patterns Aum exploited: isolation of recruits from families, sleep and sensory deprivation, cycles of reward and punishment, and ever-present narrative of spiritual warfare. And perhaps most chilling, the use of scientific credibility as spiritual proof. When engineers and chemists joined Aum, it lent Asahara authority. His teachings seemed more legitimate when backed by people in lab coats. Today, the same fusion of science and belief plays out in digital spaces, where influencers, conspiracies, and pseudoscience blur into belief systems. Aum wasn't the last. It was just one of the first. Aum Shinrikyo didn't begin with weapons. It began with meditation. It promised peace, but what it delivered was chaos. Shoko Asahara offered transcendence. He left behind trauma, death, and a dangerous legacy. And today, we live in a world where cults no longer need compounds. They need only a message and an internet connection. This has been Cracked Relic, and as always, sources will be down in the description and coming up in the credits. Thank you for watching, and look out for the next episode. It's 11 in this series, and we'll see you at each and every single one of them.